Okay, we are live. We're late. We're live. And welcome, everyone. Let's make sure that the audio is coming through a-okay over here on the U of 2. And it's what it sounds like. Most fantastic. All right, let me catch up with some of the stuff you guys have already been posting here. Dark Agent says, I was just rewatching one of the previous live streams when I saw this. You checked the comment. Did you check the comment I made about Obsession made by Curry Bakes? Broke a 53-year-old box office record. I did not see that comment about anything from Curry Bakes and breaking any box office records, but hey, good for Obsession. Uh, new new friend lore dropped apparently. Oh yeah, it's a the internet is ablaze with new friend stuff. Also watching the first anniversary event of Town and the Champions of Snarithia. Sounds familiar, but I can't put my finger exactly where. And then we've got Lorraine Carrillo says, funny how Friend went from relevant to irrelevant and then back to being irrelevant. Because Friends is, yes. I feel like Toby Fox, uh, he knows what his fans are keeping an eye out for, and so at this point, I people are saying he's trolling. I'm not saying I would actually not say he's trolling so much as he's like, okay, I know how these people work, and I'm now going to kind of give them the thing that they wanted, but not when they thought that they would get it. And that's kind of how the friend lore drop, in my opinion, went. He's like, yes, this is important. I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna wait and put this in as like a thing the week after. We're gonna see who the real treasure hunters are, the real lore hunters are, constantly combing deep into everything about the game. Art says the lore that the cats love protein, keep them away from my bacon and eggs, damn it. You know what? My cats are not huge fans of bacon and eggs. Yeah, they really aren't. They like their dry food and their kitty wet foods, which I mean is good. It's good. It's not like one of my very first cats who that cat loved everything that was on the dinner table. We learned real quick that if we didn't want Tiger to eat the mashed potatoes or the peas or the gravy or whatever it was, even the broccoli, that we had to put really heavy glass lids over everything. Otherwise, he was just going to devour it before we even got to it. So, Chris Nolan talks about YouTube movies, obsession, and back rooms. Well, good to know that he's watching that stuff. Probably trying to ingratiate himself with that fan base right before his movie opens up, which I intend to go see The Odyssey. I was having a very long conversation with one of my sisters about it last night. And I think that a lot of the hate that the movie is getting pre release, it really is solely on the casting. To which I say, look, let's just wait and see how the actors do because casting is casting. Uh, and what? Yeah, it's yes, it can be difficult and be annoying, but you know what? Casting is casting. They go with the people who they think are going to bring in the biggest bucks, not just always who they think is the best for the role. Uh, but also we were like, oh, he's using such and such translation. There's loads of translations out there, my good dudes. Which one would you prefer? You don't even know which kind of different translations there are. So slow your rolls. If you want to see the movie, go see it. ISO's here. Great to have you here, ISO. It's been a little while. How are you holding up after the tornado that you took a picture of and sent it to us? That was wild. And we've got Sabunk Erno. I'm just gonna call you Cyrano de Bergerac. I know exactly who you are. Hello everyone, my name is Markiplier. Oh well, how do you do? We got Markiplier. Which movie is this? Helen of Troy? Yeah, it's for the Odyssey, and because the Odyssey does begin at the end of the Iliad, that means that we get the surviving heroes and villains of the Iliad at the beginning of the Odyssey. That means Helen of Troy. And there's actually one scene now after I totally forgotten that this is in the original epic poem. But that Helen goes up to the Trojan horse and perfectly mimics every the voices of all the heroes' wives in an attempt to get them to react and give themselves away, because she's pretty certain that it's a trick. And the only thing that saves the Greeks is that Odysseus goes and he's like slapping people and like gagging them. He's like, "You will not speak. It's not your wife. It's Helen." And they're all like, I have not seen my wife in 10 years. Do you realize? Do you realize how backed up I am? Silence, man. Yes, Arts. Markiplier's totally here in the chat with us. Todd Goodman says Obsession shattered a 53-year-old record of the highest grossing film in cinema history with a production budget of under $1 million. Well, that is really awesome. Again, absolute kudos and congratulations to Obsession and for reaching that. That's pretty cool. And Markiplier says, "Yo, there's a story of a game that I played recently. I genuinely recommend giving it a look. The name is Honkai Star Rail, but specifically the story of Amphorius. Everything else can be ignored." You know what? That reminds me. That reminds me of when people told me years ago, when people first told me to start playing Undertale. I'm like, okay, so what's Undertale about? Well, you see, it's about this kid who falls down a mountain, and you go around either making friends or fighting monsters, and you really need to meet Papyrus. I'm like, okay, sweet, Papyrus, funny bone guy. Also, there's a fish and a dinosaur who fall in love with each other. Yuri! And I'm like, okay, this is actually not selling me the story, because you're not, what's it about? And they're like, fish dino love, and Papyrus. And it's like, guys, these words mean absolutely nothing to me. So, as a word of caution and advice from one fan to others, if you want people to get invested in a game like, for instance, Undertale, or let's say Deltarune, you gotta sell it. Well, for one thing, you should know who it is that you're talking to, because there are some people who, if you know them, you realize, maybe the story isn't actually for them, and then adjust your recommendation accordingly. So, like, for example, a little while back, I wanted to get my oldest sister to watch some anime. And I know that she normally doesn't like anime, which is funny because there's a couple of anime that she really enjoys, and one of her favorite movies is Howl's Moving Castle. So it's like, okay, then if this is an anime that I actually think that she would like, I have to sell it as it's like Howl's Moving Castle. She's like, oh, and then bring out the parts of the plot and the characters that are similar to Howl's Moving Castle, and then that gets her excited to go see it. If it's not something like Howl's Moving Castle or Apothecary Diaries, then I just know, even if I really enjoy it, and I think that she might even enjoy it, she's not going to give it a chance unless I am there to force her to see it. So always know your audience. Know who it is that you're talking to whenever you are giving any recommendation, because it could easily make or break a person's future interest in a story if you sell it wrong. It could be great, like Undertale is great, but I didn't play it for years because the people selling it to me were just not giving me good details of the game. Dorcas says there's no way Markiplier is here. This is a Deltarune stream. Hey, there's no way that you couldn't say that Markiplier isn't secretly in a corner somewhere watching this stream, ready to talk about Deltarune. Though actually, we're going to be talking about a whole lot more than just Deltarune tonight. I do want to do some fun story time. I also have a writing lesson. It's been a while since we had one of those during a live stream. So we'll be having a writing lesson. And of course, then later, I think it will be fun to have a little bit of my brain fart there, to have a little bit of theory crafting, especially with the recent lore drops that we got. Hey, we got a little golden plush. I think it's the first time seeing you here. Great to have you here. OMG, I saw your cruisy theory like a year ago, and I say you're current on like a few months ago, and now I see you here live. I'd like to know any of your theories. I'm a huge cruisy geek. Well, I definitely got loads of stuff to say about cruisy. I am working on the follow-up video in lieu of chapter 5 because yeah, we got to talk about all the things that happened, especially between Susie and Noelle. And I just replayed through the opening, and oh boy, does it hit like a massive gut punch. But where the story goes from there, and even what happens beforehand in that chapter, it's really, really fascinating that Toby teases us with huge cruisy details. And even at the festival, you can totally be all like, yeah, we're doing cruisy moments. Screw you, Noel. you can absolutely go that route. And then of course, Susie and Noel get together, and it seems all fine and dandy until you've really explored the opening. And then you're all like, oh, wait a second here. Ooh. Noelle, Susie, there's some real red flags in the beginning of your relationship. Not to take any shots, and seriously, this is not me taking shots at the Suzelle ship saying that it's awful or that it has to sink and die. Really, because we here at Camille's Harem, one of our two of our most important rules on shipping is all ships are garbage until proven otherwise, and all ships are equal. Like, just because you really like one ship doesn't mean that the others are inherently bad. But what Toby provides us within chapter 5 is so nuanced, and I really, really like it because of that. Anyways, Guy is here. Great to have you here, Guy. How are you? I am doing well. Thank you for asking. It has been a busy day. I've been helping to take care of my niece. Is one of the reasons why the stream is a little bit late, and I'm a bit behind on my writing today, but we'll try to make it all work out. Markiplier says, sounds like people who say I don't like eggs, then eat cake and brownie. Oh yes, because the eggs have transcended into something delicious. Actually, I do like eggs. As a kid, I really didn't like eggs, but now as an adult, oh yes, sign me up for them eggs. When I was a man, I ate 4 dozen eggs every morning to make up for puberty. Mike also says for Honkai Star Rail, unironically one of the best stories I've played recently. Awesome. Well, that is definitely a good recommendation. Also, I literally played Undertale at midnight when I downloaded it, so I began with the impression of a random RPG of a kid just falling into a pit with monsters. Then the next day I was fighting Azrael. That is a major jump in the story. Tagaman says, oh yeah, Gamiverse pilot just hit 29 million views, just 1 million away from 30 million views, and it's doing well. It'll be very interesting to see if the show gets an extra boost like Murder Drones did with the other episodes that came out, because its pilot kind of peaked at about 25 million views, but by the time that we got to the finale, it had gone over 50 million, which means that it was bringing in a whole lot of new people who were watching the pilot for the very first time, thanks likely to coming across the newer episodes. So that was so I think that we might see something like that happen with Gameoverse. We'll just have to see. But we got Wonder here. Great to have you here, Wonder. You dare question my authenticity? Cyrano is the strongest of Toho projects. Cyrano de Bergerac. Great to have you here. Funniest part is that my first impression of this channel wasn't storytelling, but the chat talking about how people who speak Portuguese understand Spanish, but Spanish people think Portuguese equals alien. And I still stand by that based on my own personal experiences of working with Spanish and Portuguese speakers at the exact same time. It was really hilarious. Cruisy fans' first rule of Chapter 5. We don't talk about Chapter 5. Oh, we don't talk about Chapter 5. No. We don't talk about Chapter 5. Doesn't quite work well within the rhythm of the song. Anyways, Little Golden Plush says, "Oh well, I feel like Susie is conflicted about her feelings because she doesn't know what love means, and especially how especially as things progress, because she admits to Blue, I actually don't know what love means." And here's the interesting thing: go back to when the confession is happening, and Susie says, "The way that you like me, I like you too." Like, Susie is just so excited that Noelle is returning her affection, her admiration, that there's someone else in hometown who likes her. Susie is 100% over the moon, and the idea of romance sounds fantastic. And now that she's in it, it doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense. And you know what? That is so relatable. That is so relatable. I'll just say that to give a little insight into the life of Lars, it reminds me a whole lot of my second attempt at a serious relationship. I felt very much like Susie in the initial phases, euphoric, wild. What the heck am I doing? I don't understand it, but isn't this amazing? And the moment I began to reflect, I'm like, oh, what have I got myself into? I actually don't know if I'm really, is this right? And I'm happy that I went with the feelings I had, because yeah, in the end it was best not to proceed with that relationship. It was rough. And so if that's the route that things go between Susie and Noelle, at least for me, I'm going to say, yeah, I've been there. I know what that's like. Anyways, Art says, how could Susie know what love means? She hasn't really gotten to experience it, apparently, not even from her own family. Yeah, oof. I always thought eggs tasted kind of bland. Like, I'll eat omelets now that they've got cheese. The cheese makes everything better. Art says, well, when it comes to protein, I'm more a sausage and bacon as opposed to eggs anyway. Friend can have the eggs. Oh man, give me some sausage, some bacon, some fried potatoes with some eggs and cheese in the morning. Oh, it sounds delicious. Hey, Mimic is here. Hello. Hope everyone is having a wonderful day. I hope that you're having a wonderful day, Mimic. ISO says Murder Drone's pilot at 86 million. Wait, what? What? Oh, wait, I gotta go check this out, because it's been a while since I last had a look at what Murder Drones was pulling in terms of numbers. Hold on a sec here. Murder Drone. No, stop that. Computer, what on earth were you? What on earth was my computer thinking? What was it doing? Let's see here. The pilot, 86 million views. Holy cow! Wow, that is, they continue to grow even after it concluded. You know what? That is a mark. That's a mark of a show with a healthy fan base. Not just because the fans keep coming back to check it out again and again and again, but because they are recruiting people to also come and watch it. That's really good. Markiplier says, or is it just me, or was Murder Drones really lacking in exploring its own universe? Like, they didn't really show what happened or is going on in the universe. I mean, we don't even know if humanity survived. Actually, we do learn humanity's dead. Humanity is dead by the end of the series. Yes, it unfortunately did not explore its universe as much as it should have. That is an element of cosmic horror, but it was also a part of just Liam first time story, or say first time full story, and really making a lot of mistakes along the way, which happens. Guy says, as a partial Spanish speaker, yeah, Portuguese might as well be from another planet. Guys, Portuguese isn't hard. You know what? Listening to Portuguese makes it. I'll say this: listening to Portuguese makes it sound like it would be really easy to speak, but I just do not have a tongue for it. I'll just say that. Also, every object has a gender. A spoon is a woman. Same thing in German. Everything has a gender. Der, die, oder das. He, she, or it. And then Meg says, I miss the times when Encanto came out and was going viral. Good times. Unpublished Chaos is here. Great to have you here. Hi, as a Spanish speaker, I have to admit that I probably only understand Portuguese because I studied it in school, which is fantastic. I wish that we had Portuguese classes here in Arizona. You get Spanish, and then you might get French or German. That's pretty much it. Little Golden Plush says, "You literally bring joy to my face. I have more hope for Cruzy." I do as well. Chapter five, literally, this is not even me huffing the hopium. Even though I just kind of did right there. Chapter 5 validates Cruzy. As crazy as that sounded, it absolutely does. Lars, what was that voice? That was a really weird take on what should have been a Stitch voice. My name Stitch. Which is funny because Stitch and Gollum are very close. It's just that Stitch is spoken way up more in the nose, and Gollum is down in the throat. Yes. Oh, Stitch. Get him. Stitch. Get him. It's all about where you put the emphasis. So you push the air up to your nose, or if you try to keep it down your throat, which works really well because Gollum speaks in his throat. Mark Blyer says the chat remotely understands Portuguese because they put their effort into learning new things. I know Portuguese because I was born knowing it. We are not the same. One of these days, Markiplier, if I could get my brother-in-law in on one of these streams at the exact same time you are, it would be hilarious to see two people who understand Portuguese trying to carry on a conversation while everything else is going on. I would be absolutely here for that. Art says, I took Spanish for 2 years, one in high school, 1 year in college. I can only remember very little. That was not the wind, Lars. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? The T-Rex. Then Lorraine Carrillo says, I knew Caddy had feelings for Noelle before chapter 5. Yes, welcome to the club. Murder Drones had a small boost in views recently. Apparently there's some big YouTubers that didn't know about it at the time of its release, so their viewers are also watching it now. Well, fantastic. Todos eres maravilloso. Totally said something horrible in Spanish, and I just did now as well. So I shall balance it by saying something awful in German. Actually, I don't even know why I would say something really awful in German. Actually, no, I will say something. You guys can take this to the bank and shout this at someone who's annoying you in the store. Just shout really loudly, "Hey, du Kaufwagenchipsbenutzer!" Yes. Du bist ein Kaufwagenchipsbenutzer. 12 people on the stream simultaneously. How wild. Oh, indeed. You mean copium? Wahaha, random guy. Excuse me, sir. Insert LARP tourist meme. Oh, excellent. Lorraine says, man, that was devastating to watch her cry, and cats are alluded to be super relevant to future chapters. Coincidence? Right, Toby? I'm Jesse. I'm in agreement with Lars on Cruzy. Guy says Gollum's aggressive while Stitch is more friendly. That too. That also helps. Except for actually at the very beginning when Stitch is standing trial and he insults them all. Oh, that's a great moment. Nieder meine Kiste. Little Golden Plush says, someone just mentioned Caddy, and yes, I agree. I feel so bad for Caddy. Seeing her cry made me so sad. I felt like Susie was being a jerk without knowing it. Still love her, and so here's what I'll say for chapter 5. The scene in the church is a real. It really brings things to a head for a lot of these characters. Caddy has been crushing on Noelle and has wanted to keep Noelle away from Chris, or I say keep her away from Susie. If you don't speak to Caddy about the things going on in chapter 4, then what happens at the church is a complete surprise for Caddy. If you have talked with Caddy in chapter 4, this is the culmination of a full-on betrayal in Caddy's eyes. Noelle betraying her, Chris betraying her, because she's been friends with both of them. They're betraying her feelings. Susie is being a jerk because Caddy's been a jerk to her. So Susie's finally having a chance to throw it back in her face. And she does take it too far. Chris doesn't do anything because, well, Chris and the player have a complicated relationship at this point. It's hard to figure why Chris does what they do at certain times, why they wrest control away from us, and other times why they just let things happen. And I do have a theory about that. We're going to put a pin in that for theory crafting time. But the crazy thing really is that for Noelle in that moment, Noelle's reaction is so lackluster. And if you don't play the weird route, honestly, Noelle's reaction feels very incongruent with what's been established about her character. When you play the weird route, it's actually even more devastating, because at that moment, Noelle's basically like, I don't care. She's like, I'm getting what I want. Caddy, I've never really thought that much about you, is pretty much what's going on. And her most surface level of, I just don't understand what's going on, is such a facade. And it really hurts. Like, again, replaying chapter 5 right now, it does not cast Noelle in a good light at all. That doesn't mean she's the villain. It doesn't mean that Noelle needs to suffer. It means that Noelle, like Chris, needs some serious help and really needs to change some things up. And the thing is that Noelle's character will be toxic in the relationship between her and Susie. Take this as good writing advice, but also as good real life advice. Romance does not fix people. I have seen way too many real life relationships implode because someone thought that love would just fix it all. It doesn't. People need to want to change. Romance, or I should say, love for other people can be a huge motivator towards that, but love in and of itself does not fix things. So there you have it. Good writing advice, good life advice. And as Medic says, Noelle is just complicated. We all are. Yeah, Noelle is complicated. And I'm not necessarily going to hold that against her, but I'm also not going to not point out that there's some real issues. Same thing goes with Chris. And that's going to be a large part, actually, of the upcoming Cruzy video, is highlighting how Chris is in a bad place. And things need to change. And that's actually one of the beauties of Chapter 5, is that Chapter 5 foreshadows how Chris and Susie can make up, how Chris can change and become a better person, and also how Susie can change and become a better person. At the very least, they're going to walk away as much stronger friends, or, as I would posit, there's a very good chance for an actual romance between them that can be healthy and work. But there's a lot of work that has to be put in by these characters and not just by the player in order to make that happen. Nick says, "Oh wow, that's cool. The actual Markiplier watches Camille's Harem and is here in the chat right now. I know, it's amazing." And Markiplier is convinced that he can fix Noelle. I want to see more morally gray Noelle so bad. I mean, yeah, me too. I think we're going to get a lot of that in Chapter 6. Noelle was thinking of number 1 that day. Oof, she was. Susie got your number, and Susie ain't your friend. Look who took you under with 7 inches in. Poof. Dork says, I don't even like Caddy, but even I didn't want to see her cry. Yeah, it's really sad. Let's see. I know I missed some few things. Guy says, how are you to do good at voices? Okay. You want to know the secret? I'm going to tell you guys my secret to good voice acting. I'll give it to you after I take a drink of water. Good water. Okay, I kid you not. This is how I worked on copying accents, and it actually began with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I went to a water park, and at the water park, I went into one of the water slides, and I practiced shouting Arnold Schwarzenegger lines in his accent, and I allowed the echoes within the slide to come back to me, and I used that to tune myself to his voice, or at least a mimicry of his voice. So like right here with ISO, half of me just thought that Lars said the N word before I processed the Stitch voice. LMAO. Markiplier says, this will be a romantic story like none that has ever come before. You are my specials. Let's see up here. Markiplier also says, speaking German and remotely high pitched makes you sound like either a Disney villain or never mind. Deltarune also says, here's some funny news. Christopher Nolan says younger audiences are rejecting AI slot because that's what they are. A lot of the AI developers are in absolute shock that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are, as they are becoming more aware of the long-term effects of AI, and also how AI is wiping out entry-level positions for a lot of them. They're like, screw us. Yeah, it's got to go down. It's got to go down now. Okay, there you go. There's my Arnold Schwarzenegger clone, baby. Meg says, I really hope Noel doesn't fumble with Caddy like how Jax fumbled with Ribbit. Oof. You know, I wish I'd been there in the game because I would have absolutely recovered Ribbit. Just saying. Put that cookie down. It's one of the best lines. One of the best lines from such a funny movie. Actually, you know, one of these days, I'm going to have to do a review of. I should do a review of The Last Action Hero because that is one of the best movies with one-liners from Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it's Arnold Schwarzenegger making fun of Arnold Schwarzenegger. It is such a good movie. How the hell did you just mention the Terminator and the governor of California? Wait, where did the hate against Makima suddenly arrive? I mean, I understand where it came from, but it just suddenly came out of left field. The way Jax treated Ribbit was horrible. Amen. Oh, it's so bad. It's so heartbreaking. California. I want to be the mayor. I want to be the governor of California. Okay, I don't know if I've actually shared this on any stream before. Remind me if I have. I have been to Arnold Schwarzenegger's hometown of Tal, which literally means valley. You have to say California as Arnold. There you go, use California. Yeah, so anyways, I've been to his hometown of Tal, and from there, if you go to his hometown, they've got a special plaque in front of his childhood home that you can go and you can check out. And just down the hill from his house, literally just like right down the road, is his old elementary school, which is still a functioning elementary school. But there's then also a museum dedicated to Arnold Schwarzenegger right next to his elementary school, literally in the same parking lots. And there it's got like all of his old workout equipment, and it's got a bunch of posters and some videos that you can see and stuff. And yeah, it's like, it's silly and cool all at the same time to know that's all there. Also, he bought out an entire ice cream chain in the city next to his hometown. So the big city right next to his hometown is the city of Graz, and there is an ice cream chain called Charlie Temmel's. He bought it out because it was his favorite ice cream growing up. Such good ice cream. Holy cow. On a hot day, you just find yourself a little Charlie Temmel's like car or little stand, and you go and you get yourself a big heaping helping of ice cream. Oh, it's so good. It's such good ice cream. Arnold versus Goku, power scaling at its peak. Amen. No, my cookie. Nom, nom, nom. He is putting my star on top of my tree. Dude, I have the Inferno of Jealousy blazing right now. I've played the Terminator, but you guys are the real Terminators. Arnold Schwarzenegger to the U.S. Army in Bermuda. Good thing he said it there, not anywhere else. Demonetizable. Little Golden Plush says, love the fact that in Undertale 10-year anniversary, when talking to Gerson, he mentioned human and monsters actually being in a romantic relationship, and we got a canon one-sided unrequited love from Cruzy. Yeah. I mean, we're getting all this stuff. Now then, I will actually say this as far as like the whole is it unrequited? The opening of chapter 5 says no. The opening of chapter 5, again, playing through all the various options that are given, Susie really likes Chris, and not just platonically. There is an option for romance between the two of them. The thing is that it all rolls with Noelle first. Noelle just got there first in that regards. And I have another theory for that, and I'm going to put a pin in that for later. So, so hold on to your hats there. Mark Player says you guys will never know what a good cooked chicken is until you buy a Brazilian $5 cooked chicken. I guess I'm gonna have to take your word for it. One of the best chickens I ever had was a Turkish-made chicken in the city of Erlangen in Germany that went with some tzatziki. Oh, I remember that meal because it was so dang delicious. It's been over a decade, and I still remember that meal. It is beyond the plane of existence of how good it is. Well, you're going to have to let me know which city exactly in Brazil, or if it's just all over Brazil, that you can have this delicious $5 cooked chicken, and I will bring my brother-in-law along, and so he can relive his time in Brazil, and we'll eat chicken together. Could I speak to the drug dealer of the house, please? Yes, I love that line. that is from for those who don't know, that is from the movie The Last Action Hero, and it has the actor who plays Tywin Lannister from Game of Thrones in it as one of the main villains, and him and Schwarzenegger in the same movie together is amazing. And honestly, I would love to have had just an entire movie of their shenaniganery. Lorraine says, Noelle claims she doesn't understand why Caddy started disliking Susie after she told her about her crush. If that's true, it's even more tragic because she never knew. The angst will be palpable. Oh, it absolutely is. Rio de Janeiro. To be fair, you will need to go to a questionable area in terms of security. Oh. Well then. So just make sure I only have $5 on myself and nothing else, and everything should be just fine. Little Golden Plush says, can't wait for your upcoming video soon. Well, thank you. I'm going to try my hardest to have it out next week. Because I know people have been waiting. It's taking a little bit longer than I thought it would. I'm going to be working on it. Trust me. Meg says, I could go for some ice cream right now, to be honest. Same here. It's been so hot. The monsoon has not really kicked in this year yet. It's been devastating. It's so hot down here. So yeah, some ice cream actually sounds really, really good right now. Mark Blair says, speaking of this line, unironically, some cartels here have used this line as a secret code to purchase more expensive powder. So higher ups could buy it in bulk. Could I talk to the drug dealer? Oh boy. Who would have thought that the Terminator could be this influential? I mean, I could. I definitely see it. I definitely see that. Actually, that also reminds me, hold on a sec here. I gotta let a cat through a door before she tears up the carpet. Yes, honey? There's the fat cat. When I was in Austria as a missionary, long story short, we were under the protection of the Russian mob. But that also meant that we had to kind of respect certain boundaries. There was one guy in particular who really, really liked us, but you never went to his house unannounced because you never knew what kinds of people he was dealing with. Uh, and there was one instance. This is a true story. This is an absolutely true story. There was a lady in the city of Linz, which is northern Austria, who got her car was stolen. This was passed along, I don't know how, to the people in Graz. Graz is on the other side of Austria, not quite in the armpit of Austria, but like down in the south, near the border with Italy. And so somehow news about this had come to Graz. Word got to George. George was one of our friends in the mob, and so George was like, "Hey, give me that lady's telephone number." He called her up and he said, "Okay, 98% of all car theft in Austria is orchestrated by the Russian mob. We will find out who took your car and we're going to make sure that it gets back to you. Just give me a day." George made some phone calls, then called the lady and said, "Okay, your car is right now in Vienna, which is way on the other side of Austria." So, lady in the north speaking to a mobster in the south, get your car from East Austria. Go to Vienna. Your car's on Sunset Street. There's right now a person watching your car, so no one else steals it. The key is in such and such place. Go grab your key, get in your car, and the person sends their apologies for stealing your car. It's just like, holy cow. When you're friends with the Russian mob, you've got some good friends, but it's also at the same time, it's such a dangerous, shady world. In that same city of Graz, which is right next to where Schwarzenegger was born in Tal, I also nearly had a bad run-in with the Turkish mob. What saved me and my buddy was that we were paying attention. We were using logic. When you come up to a Duna shop to go get some delicious Duna, Duna is so tasty. When you go to a Duna shop and there's nearly 20 really buff guys all sitting around, none of them eating, none of them doing anything, and you know that you're on the side of Vienna that the Turkish mob controls, that's when you say, there is something really bad happening in that shop. We are not going into that shop. Screw how hungry we feel. We're going to another restaurant. And we went somewhere else. It's like, yeah. Especially, I mean, I don't know how any of them would have found out if we were connected with the Russian mob, but it would have been, yeah. If we had gone into a Duna shop with 20 members of the Turkish mob, and they somehow knew about our affiliation with this other guy, I don't imagine that would have gone down very well. Lars nearly had a bad run-in with the Turkish mob, but we were under the protection of the Russian mob. But only if you let the Russian mob know ahead of time that you're about to do something really, really stupid. Art says, it reminds me of that scene in Sopranos where one of the mobsters tries to offer a Starbucks manager protection and they get rejected. LOL. Yeah. Do you realize who we are? We're Starbucks. Do you realize who we are? We're the Italian mob. Oh, it's like it's an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Dorcas Daydream says to Lorraine, there's no way Noelle didn't connect the dots at some point, although she could have just thought Caddy was being overprotective. I think that Noelle, I'll be honest here, Noelle is so honed in on her own issues, on her own life, that it puts her in an awkward situation where she doesn't fully understand what's happening with other people around her. The only reason why she starts really paying attention to what's happening with Chris, and this is not necessarily just in the weird route either, is because we as the player start making Chris do things that go against what she has typified as these are Chris things. And so the moment that Chris is not acting exactly the way that she would expect, Noelle starts suspecting that there's something up. And especially in chapter 4 at the Holiday Manor, as Susie is talking about how Chris is like way more vocal, Chris flirts, Chris does all these things, and Noelle's like, no, that's not Chris. And again, in light of the weird route, the thing is this is that it's been primed. It has been primed for a similar confrontation, even in the normal route between Susie and Noelle, where Noelle is going to open up and say, Chris, you're now interesting. You've broken the mold. You're powerful. You're doing things that are not Chris things. I want that as well. Because Noelle is more focused on herself and what she wants. And that's a toxic trait, even in a relationship with Susie. Even when she's like, I no longer feel the desire to run away if I can be here with you. At the heart of it, Noelle is still trying to run away. Noelle is still trying to break away from doing Noelle things. And that's an important observation to make. Mimic, just an average day in Professor Lars's life. Yeah, my early 20s were very wild. Darius, let's see here. Art says, so Noelle is your average teenager. Yeah, pretty much. All right. So let's actually shift gears on over to my writing lesson for tonight. If you go into, it should be available almost right up at the top of the stream's description. So if you go to the video description, you should find like on the third line a link to a Google Doc. If you have the ability and opportunity to open up, I would encourage you to please do that. And let me know that it's actually working, because I try to make sure that anyone who has the access to this link should be able to view it. So that way you can print it out or copy it and throw it onto one of your own documents, what have you, because I feel like this could be a really helpful resource in learning how to craft descriptions for scenes, settings, events, and people within your stories. So I already see, yay, we got Anonymous Dolphin showing up. Woohoo! I am going to, likewise, I'm going to try to share, at least on my screen here, this good old documente. A sec here. Let me. Hey, Comiccraft is here. Great to hear you, Comiccraft. You missed 45 minutes of me doing some voice acting, talking a little bit about Cruzy, Noelle, and also regaling people with my tales of knowing people in the Russian mob back in Austria. All right. Let me share my screen for a brief moment. Yeah. There's your tips. We're going to use the entire screen. We are going to get ourselves the Eternal Swirl. Oh, there's our Eternal Swirl right there. And boom. Okay. So here is the documente. All right, so how to describe settings. Now that obviously I put in people, places, events, and the likes, but this was ultimately brought up because of a question that was actually in the Harem about how do you describe stuff? Specifically, how do you describe stuff without going overboard? And so here's an idea. Here's a challenge that I think would actually be fairly helpful. So number one, and I fully encourage people to try this out, like right now. Please do try it out. Think about like the name of a person or a place or an event within your story that you are trying to describe. For the sake of talking about settings, I am going to say a setting. Let's see here. For any particular story, you know what? Let's go with the Cliffs of Insanity from The Princess Bride. Now then, once you have your place that you're going to write there for number one, number two, choose no more than four details that any character in your story would notice first about the thing or person that you're describing. Since we're doing the Cliffs of Insanity, which should be said that way anytime it's referenced, the Cliffs of Insanity, immediately people will realize it is redonkulously tall, super steep, sheer, jagged cliff faces that will tear you apart. Okay, really tall, jagged cliffs. All right, we got that. Ruins. There's a series of ruins on top of the cliffs. Number three, it's right there on the sea line. It's right there on the shores. There's like you can even see it that there's when you come up against it, the water just hits those cliffs. And let's see here. So we've got really tall cliff faces, ruins on top, ruins on top, right there at the water. If we want, and you don't need to do four. It just says no more than four. So we got those three. Those are kind of like the big things that people would immediately realize. And maybe you could just say that the Cliffs of Insanity have absolutely earned their name, because you would be foolish to try to climb up or down those. So now that we've got our four details to go along with the Cliffs of Insanity, you then want to write down four adjectives that would work well with the details that you've already listed above. So for instance, the ruins, I might pair off the ruins with overgrown, because there is this growth. There's a lot of plant life up at the top of the cliffs that make it feel like these ruins just aren't some blocky whatever that's just been there since forever, but that nature has totally taken over. The ruins are overgrown. The sheer cliffs, I might say jagged, sharp, sheer, something like that. For the waterfront, treacherous, dangerous, unpredictable, and then just for how crazy this is, I might use overwhelming, daunting as my descriptions, as my adjectives to go along with the details that I have listed. The idea here is that honestly, for your own work, if you think about your own work, you're giving a name to this place, this thing, or this person. And immediately then people, when they have a name to go with something, they can start better anchoring themselves within your story. Names are very powerful. Names are anchors. But what allow those anchors to set is when they hit the bedrock or the coral reef of the details. The details allow the anchor to stay in place. So that way that name has meaning to it. So these details bring life to this thing that you have named. And it allows for the audience to better picture what you are trying to tell, what part of the story you're trying to tell, where you're putting the characters, who these characters are. But having these details and these adjectives isn't enough. You want to practice putting them into usable form. Believe it or not all good adjectives go well with all good details, because sometimes you can actually use two really amazing words that end up becoming redundant, and redundancy is a little silly in writing, unless you're trying to be cheeky. There's always a way around certain rules, but unless you're being cheeky, you want to avoid redundancy when writing. So the last part right here, number 4, is practice how you will use these details by writing a short paragraph to describe the person, place, or event that you choose. And you must make sure in this paragraph that you utilize all the things that you've written for parts 2 and 3, because this will allow you to see if these words that you've chosen, if these details that you've chosen properly complement one another to quickly paint the picture of this person, place, or thing. So there we have that. And I'm going to stop my sharing there for a moment. Let's see, I only catch up with what some of you guys have been putting here. Little Golden Plush commented, "What are your thoughts about Noelle going in the dark world? I think she is too vulnerable. Susie lied about the dark world, and also saying that people in danger, but bring Noelle to a place that is dangerous." Little Golden Plush, I will share my thoughts about that. What I am going to say is this: is that bringing Noelle to the dark world was actually the plan all along. And the point is to put her in the line of danger. The point is to force her to confront the dangers of the prophecy, the dangers of the dark world. And as such, Noelle will grow powerful. That is the plan. That has always been the plan. And now we are finally catching up with it in the game. Nick says, "Noelle in a nutshell. I'm totally not like the other girls. I wear dark mascara, dark eyeliner when others don't. I also listen to Nirvana. I'm totally not like other girls. I'm unique. I'm different." Comcast says, "For my superhero story, I've decided to randomly write a scene where my character just wakes up and has an unusual morning to get a better grasp of the character. I ended up not describing the house at all because why would the character take note of their own house? Just some basic general stuff that comes up. This thing about adjectives reminds me of an old fanfic where the main character had limited in-universe meta-awareness and could pinpoint notable people if they had more than 3 notable traits. That's actually really cool. That's a cool device. Only to fail the test on someone the MC forgot to think too hard about and missed a major villain in disguise until the last second." That's cool. I really like that. But yeah, so that document right up there, that's basically just up there. So that way, I want that to be a tool for people to utilize in their own stories when it comes to trying to best describe environments, because it's so easy to either go overboard or to not describe enough. Now then, you shouldn't just limit yourself to 4 descriptors. It's so easy to fall into formulaic storytelling to say, "Oh, I need these 4 things." And I'll be honest, one of my quirks when it comes to writing is I often do things in 3s. And that comes down to how a certain writing style was drilled into me in high school, that everything comes in 3s. 3 examples, 3 explanations, 3 important points to make, 3 descriptors, 3s, 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 3s. And I have to consciously break myself out of that pattern when I'm writing. In fact, today I kind of had to do that where I'm describing how Captain Carsonius in my sequel to the Monarch Mercenaries Autonomy is dealing with a lot of paperwork because he's being forced to now he's being forced to make amends for all the crappy stuff he did in the first book, and those amends are being forced on him by being forced to do all the paperwork that makes the city of autonomy go round. Gotta love that bureaucracy. And so there's some new things, some interesting things on his desk that he's got to take care of. And in my brain, I'm like, I need a 3rd thing. I need a 3rd thing. I need a 3rd thing. And I'm like, no, I actually don't need a 3rd thing. Because the most important stuff as far as like new things go is there's suddenly now a bunch of cults that are sending him letters because they're all like, "We want to meet with you." And he's like, "I really don't want to meet with a bunch of cultists. What the heck is going on here?" And that comes down to events in the first book, why a bunch of cults are suddenly interested in him. Second thing is that there's suddenly a bunch of smaller pirate crews that now want to work with the Monarch Mercenaries to launch bigger raids onto other places and get a greater share of the booty and loot. which is something that would not be uncommon for pirates to have historically done. If pirates wanted to go after a much bigger catch, you would have different crews meet up and go sack a place if they felt that they could do it. And so, because in the first book, the Monarch Mercenaries, in order to it, the first book is a lot of the first half of the first book is a lot of fetch quest stuff to kind of set up the big raid to go against these godlike beings and steal their all-seeing telescope. But part of the whole fetch quest thing in the first book is that the Monarch Mercenaries, their reputation has plummeted. No one takes them seriously anymore. So Captain Carsonius hides from his crew his real intentions by saying, hey, look, we're going to work with some other crews on a big job. This way, people see us as team players. It will help us get back our reputation. And now that word has gotten out that the Monarch Mercenaries worked with all these other crews, these smaller crews are all like, hey, can we also work with you? We would love to go and plunder bigger planets and stuff. So is that good? Is that good? So that's the two new things on his desk. And again, my brain is like, do three things, do three things, do three things. Nope, break it on out. Breaking out of that mold. So for this writing lesson, or for this writing challenge, the number 4 is not some magical number. The number 4 is just there to give you a chance to describe enough without going maybe too overboard. But there are times where you would want to use more than 4 descriptions or less than 4 descriptions for any person, place, or thing. I'm taking a drink of water right there. Now then, let me give you guys an example from the Lord of the Rings, from the Two Towers, because people love to rag on Tolkien for going way too in depth when it comes to descriptions, and Tolkien definitely toes the line with almost going purple prosy. But the thing is that if you actually take the time to read through the Lord of the Rings, you'll find out that Tolkien delivers a lot of information, usually very succinctly, meaning he is to the point. And when he takes a moment to stop the story and describe Helm's Deep, like what I'm about to read right here, this is important because Tolkien is basically like, I am laying out the scene for you, because for the rest of this long chapter, you and these characters are stuck in this place, and it's not a very nice place. And so that's why he goes into such detail. So that way, then when the action comes, you are already clued into where all the stuff is. That way, you are not lost as we jump around from place to place to place, as Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli are trying to prevent the Riders of Rohan from being overwhelmed by the armies of Isengard. So, when King Theoden decides to turn off away from the fords of Isen to Helm's Deep, which, if you want more information about that, I did a video about the Battle of the Fords of Isen. Absolutely worth watching, because it is something that's not in the movies, and it's actually barely in the books. It was something that Tolkien wrote on the side that he never put into his stories, but it is an absolutely fascinating canon event that determines that the Battle of Helm's Deep even happens. It's really, really cool. I highly recommend checking it out. Anyways, the host turned away from the road to the fords of Isen and bent their course southward. Night fell, and still they rode on. The hills drew near, but the tall peaks of the Thuringia were already dim against the darkening sky. Still some miles away, on the far side of the Westfold Vale, lay a green comb. Not a comb that you run through your hair. Comb, a great bay in the mountains, out of which a gorge opened in the hills. Men of that land called it Helm's Deep, after a hero of old wars who had made his refuge there. Ever steeper and narrower, it wound inward from the north under the shadow of the Thuringia, till the crow-haunted cliffs. There's a good description for you. Crow-haunted cliffs rose like mighty towers on either side, shutting out the lights. At Helm's Gate, before the mouth of the deep, there was a heel of rock thrust outward by the northern cliff, There upon its spur stood high walls of ancient stone, and within them a lofty tower. Men said that in the far off days of the glory of Gondor, the Sea Kings had built here this fastness with the hands of giants. The Hornburg, it was called, for a trumpet sounded upon the tower, echoed in the deep behind, as if armies long forgotten were issuing to war from caves beneath the hills. A wall, too, the men of old had made from the Hornburg to the southern cliff, barring the entrance to the gorge. Beneath it, by a wide culvert, the deepening stream passed out. From the feet of the Horn Rock it wound, and flowed then in a gully through the mist of a wide green gore, sloping gently down from Helm's Gate to Helm's Dyke. Thence it fell into the deepening combe and out into the Westfold Vale. There in the Hornburg at Helm's Gate, Erkenbrand, master of the Westfold on the borders of the Mark, now dwelt. As the days darkened with the threat of war, being wise, he had repaired the wall and made the fastness strong. So, that right there, those are just 2 paragraphs, not even a full page to describe Helm's Deep. Now then, granted, like I said, Tolkien does brush against maybe describing too much. However, again, he has to describe all that because as the rest of the chapter proceeds, we are dealing with all of this. And in fact, the movie actually simplified the complexity of the Battle of Helm's Deep, because the dike area where the water spills out to was actually made as a natural trench that the riders of Rohan first try to hold against the armies of Isengard, which they then break over the dike, and they basically drain out the water so that way they can then use the entire combe as a staging ground for them to then bring up their artillery and then take on the Hornburg. And he already describes, like, for instance, the one weakness in the wall being the culvert where they're going to place the bombs, and you get the sense of you also get the sense of like how it's so claustrophobic. It echoes, it's loud, it's dark. These high walls, this high tower, it's ancient, and you get all of that, and that fantastic 2-paragraph template is what served as the foundation for Peter Jackson and his team to craft such a fantastic set piece for the Battle of Helm's Deep in the movie The Two Towers. So, knowing how to write good descriptions and knowing the economy of words, what works well with different details and different adjectives and the likes, can really help you convey so much information with just a few words. And that, I think, as writers, that's what we normally want to go for. We want to be able to say as much as we can with as few words as possible. It takes a lot of work, but the resource I provided hopefully allows you to practice, so that way you can get better and better at your own writing to describe what you need to describe within your stories. All right, I pontificated long enough on that. Let me catch up with some of the stuff you guys wrote right here. Concraft says, just remembering that old fanfic, one of the coolest moments was the main character thinking on what he had missed for things to go wrong. Then he noticed that a character he had previously dismissed had a lot of traits. Just straight up 3 is the average minimum to matter to fate, and this guy has 6. How did I miss that? You weren't paying attention, DMC. Little Golden Plush says, I now just remembered. I think Susie is going to find out how Chris feels about her either in chapter 6 or chapter 7. Also, maybe in those chapters we might get a bittersweet ending. I agree with that. Stormcrow says, hey, Lars, good evening, sir. After nearly a month after the pain of Cruzy sinking, I found a more compelling Chris yearning side of Suzel, and I love me my emotional pain. Oof. Concraft says, hey, Lars, what are some good tips for ways for characters to learn lore in a natural way? So, okay, so if you're talking about the characters learning lore in a natural way, one of the best ways for characters to learn stuff that's important is in conversations, and not even in conversations directly having to do with that lore. So, I know it's very tempting, and I do this a whole lot of the time, so I'm guilty of this as well. Hey, I'm Omega's here. Apologies for the tardiness, but hey, this writing challenge seems fun. Awesome. Hope that you enjoy it. I'm Omega, and great to have you here. Um, One of the best ways, so like a lot of, again, I'm very guilty of this, where if I want to communicate lore in conversations, I have characters just talking about that thing. So they're just talking about that lore, and so it's like, oh, like what do you mean of the cast what's like what do you mean about the abandoned castles of Golden High Garden, which that's a mouthful. And it's like, have you not heard? But the golden castle, like the golden grounds of High Castle or of High Garden, are blah 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 blah. And they just start saying all of this stuff, and so that's like directly answering questions and thereby imparting lore. But one of the things I'll say here, I'm just going to pull up some other footage to help us entertained for a moment. Nick says, honestly, you'd be a great narrator for an audio version of Modern Mercenaries, Mr. Lars. Your voice is literally perfect. Well, thank you. And I definitely need to do an audio version for the Monarch Mercenaries. I'm actually right now working on a second edition of the Monarch Mercenaries because it definitely needs some work, and there's some artwork that needs to be replaced. So working on that right now. Maybe when all that's done, we can then do a proper audio book. Anyways, so let's say instead of rather than just immediately addressing, hey, we need to get this lore, I've got a question, now answer me, dear man, what is the lore that I seek? Instead, if you approached it as that characters are having like just genuine conversations with each other, you've got a bunch of friends who are going questing, and they're at a pizzeria, and as they're taking a break, and one of the guys can then say, hey, so my sister's boyfriend he said that when he went looking for the silver hand of Frank, that when he and his buddies were looking for the silver hand of Frank, that they went up to Mount Iridon, where there's that really creepy abandoned park. And when they went there, they were expecting to fight a bunch of ghosts, but rather than fighting ghosts, they were fighting the unhinged jaw woman, all the way from Japan. You weren't expecting that, now were you? And it's just like, dude, your sister dates the weirdest guys. That's where do you even come up with that? There is no abandoned park on top of Mount Iridor. There's an abandoned hotel. Are you sure about that? Yeah, of course I'm sure about that. Their characters might not even be looking for the silver hand of Frank, or they might not even ever go to Mount Iridor. But you know what? The unhinged mouth woman might suddenly show up in the story, and suddenly your characters like, wait, we thought you were supposed to be on supposed to be in Japan. No, you're supposed to be on Mount Iridor, and then come to find out that this spook, this haunting creature, indeed came from the hotel, the abandoned hotel up on Mount Iridor, because some really weird tourist went to Japan, captured a monster, put it into a suitcase, brought it back to whatever country Mount Iridor is in, and was up there on that hotel before the hotel got abandoned, unwittingly unleashed the monster, and then stuff happened. And so, obviously, more of the information would come out through conversation, but you've already then dropped the possibility of this particular monster being in a place where it shouldn't have, just based off of a silly conversation that your characters are having on the side. Another way that you can impart information that will be relevant for the lore, or that's lore relevant, is let's say you've got a magical school, or you've got a regular school, or I don't know, you just got a school setting. This is one of the reasons why it's so important to have classes in your magical schools that are not just, hey, I'm going to learn how to point my wand harder. But in those classes, the teachers can drop information about various things that will be relevant later on, about a spell that everyone thinks isn't actually real, or hey, there's like a part of the class, there's a part of the school that's off limits. It's off limits because of this thing. Um, you can easily impart a lot of lore relevant information in a classroom setting, and even do it in a way where it's just part of the conversation, it's part of the lesson. It might not even feel very relevant to the characters right then, but it can become relevant later on. Another way that you can have characters learn stuff that's lore important for them is like have them go camping, and people start talking about stuff because people love chatting during camping. Grandparents come to town and reminisce and share interesting, important details. Like you can get very, very creative with how characters learn stuff. Actually, I just remember this off the top of my head. Oh, this is so good because this becomes important almost like way, way late in the story. But if you read the book Beyonders, there's a part in the book where the main character Jason, when he first comes to the world of Lyrian, he magically ends up near the repositorium of learning, and because he knows that he's going to sound like a and well actually he doesn't realize that he sounds like a wackadoodle. He's being very honest. He's like, everyone, I came from another world and I'm just trying to find my way home. Is there like a book on magical portals that take you back to Earth, please? And the guy who's in charge of the repository is like, you're speaking in code. I know that if someone comes here speaking in code, I need to give them the special book. And then Jason's like, yes, please give me the special book. Little does he realize that the special book that he's being given is actually a trap for people who oppose the evil Emperor Maldor, and it's meant to give them hope in a quest that's meant to kill them. So the information in this book, which sets him on the quest that's meant to kill him, the book has little tidbits of information here and there. And there's another book that he also just kind of reads on the side. Those two books hold super relevant information that becomes very, very important, like in the last two chapters of the book. It's things that you're like, yeah, whatever. We read it. Brandon Mole's having fun describing weird, creepy things. Okay. And then you're like, what? What do you mean that the chief torturer is still here? Oh no! Oh, like the moment that Jason starts blabbing under the influence of drugs, you're like, no, no, no! This is the guy who wrote the creepy book about torture. Oh no, that's the guy who sacrificed his own skin. No, no! It's so creepy. I'm getting goosebumps just remembering that part. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. And I'm not even doing it justice. Seriously, read Beyonders. It's such a good book. It's such a good book series. Anyways, but yeah, there's so many different ways that you can impart lore relevant information without it just simply being, hey, I need to know a thing. And then the character who knows says the thing and reveals all the things you need to know. And normally you reveal all that extra information through conversations, events, classroom experiences, and the likes that don't feel like they're immediately connected to what the main character is going to need. And so it's a fun roundabout way of just making the world feel bigger, making it feel lived in, making the characters feel real, and then pulling out that thing from earlier. And honestly, audiences like it when that happens. So they're like, wait, what if there was other details I missed? And then they go back and they reread your book and they fall in love with it all over again. Huzzah. Wow, sounds horrifying. I hope you're all right after that, Mr. Lars. I was, because it's so good. It's also actually another moment towards the end of the first Beyonders book when Jason, I'm not going to spoil what exactly happens that moment, but Jason gets help from a certain character. And one of the very first things that character says is, woof, you look like you're full of goma worms. It sounds like a little random thing. You're like, okay, goma worms, whatever. He looks like he's really sick. Oh no, in the second book, you find out that goma worms are worms that control zombies. and that there's this zombie plague that is communicated by these weird worms that burrow into your flesh and then immediately start murdering you and then changing you into their flesh puppet. Oh, it's so disturbing and it's so dang good. And the Goma worms is in my top 3 of like the worst zombie plague because all of the zombies are sentient. Like they're not just mindless flesh eaters. Every single zombie is intelligent to one degree or another. And the Goma worm, and like you can't just simply shoot them in the head. You have to burn the entire body to ashes because the Goma worms repair dead flesh. And so like you can like blast the head off of a Goma worm zombie, and that Goma worm zombie will either still operate even without its head, or it will find the head and put it back on and then seal it back in place and just keep going. It's just they're so creepy. and they're so dang hard to kill. Uh all right. Yeah, and all of that is set up by one random sentence of "Woof, you look like you're full of Goma worms." All right. Let's see here. Let's see here. Dorcas Adrian says the Kuchisake Ona. Yes. Also, that reminds me, I really need to catch up with Dara-san now that the anime is out. Comic Craft, the thing is that the story I'm currently working on is that for the more fantastical elements, there's no such thing as common knowledge outside of a character or two. The cast is mostly going in half blind. Currently, my story has a mentor character apart from the cast, so maybe I should let the initial exposition happen. It would be neutral after all in retrospect. Now then, what I will say is this, is that if you've got characters who are exploring information that's not common knowledge in a magical setting, I highly, highly recommend that you show them getting that information through like trial and error, through comparing notes and knowledge, talking to people who might otherwise be experts, all to treat it kind of as like a scientific conundrum where people are trying to solve a greater problem and are therefore pooling knowledge and resources. You actually very rarely see that happen in fantasy, but it's something that if you do it right, it really helps to make the story just feel more lived in. Roll with that. Little golden plush says Flowery and Ralsei pulling out the Susie card on Chris is funny. Like in the parkour, if you failed too many times, Ralsei says, do it for Susie, Chris. Oh wait, really? Oh, I missed that, even though I had a real hard time with the controls at first with the parkour. I missed that part actually. Yeah, no, here's the thing. Ralsei's pulling for Chris and Susie because Ralsei knows the man. This chapter, when it comes to Ralsei, this chapter hints at Ralsei being way more clued in than he presents himself, and he is getting frustrated with a lot of stuff. Not just with Flowery, he's getting frustrated with Chris. He's getting frustrated with Susie. He's getting frustrated with the prophecy at this point. And he's just all like, no. He's like, you two obviously like each other. Get together, please. Noelle is not that Noelle is bad news, but Ralsei knows what needs to happen, and Chris getting closer with Noelle is antithetical to what needs to happen in Ralsei's mind. And Ralsei is also frustrated that he's playing the prim and proper prince, every now and then cross-dressing as princess, when there is some serious work that needs to be done. Well, he's frustrated that, it's more, let me amend this. He's putting on airs. He's putting up a facade. And it's frustrating because he has so much more power. But he's playing along with the plan. Why, though? That is the big question. Why is Ralsei going along with the plan? And what plan is it? I don't think it's Carol's plan. So which plan is Ralsei going along with? He says it's the prophecy. But there's a moment when he and Flowery are having a disagreement that it's kind of implied that Ralsei could basically one shot every chapter himself if he wanted, but he's not doing it. He's going along with the prophecy, but he's also trying to break the prophecy. Like what? So it's like, what exactly is going on here? What here exactly is going on with him? There's something that we're missing. There's some crucial details that we're missing when it comes to Ralsei. And I do have a theory about that, but it's a theory that's largely built on pillars of sand. Pillars of sand. I hear Jerusalem bells are ringing. I'll say here, like, quickly take a drink of water. I'm Omega says, is this the same series that has the prison with those addictive pies? Yes. Oh yes, the addictive pies. Oh my gosh, yeah. The Eternal Heroes Feast. Oh my gosh, that is maybe one of the most brilliant, disturbing inventions for any fantasy story I've ever come across. So, for those who don't know, in the series Beyonders, it takes place in a world where the heroes lost, the villains won. There are still every now and then there's some new heroes that come up here and there. There's some little holdouts, and the evil wizard emperor Maldor. One of his ways of making sure that the heroes always lose is that he has a way of escape. So he makes the heroes' lives just absolute hell. But if the heroes continue to do really well, he presents them with a way out, where a quote unquote neutral party offers them an invitation to come to this grand feast, a feast that is on quote unquote neutral ground, where the emperor will not fight against them, where they will be safe. And here at this feast, you're safe, and you can do whatever you want. You can eat whatever you want, and it's all free and fair game. But the thing is that it's effectively a prison. Every activity is a chance for the heroes to give into their vices. All of the food is laced with addictive substances, addictive substances that will destroy their mind and body very quickly once you give into them. And so as a result, like all of these different heroes, they're all like super overweight now because they've become so lazy and so addicted. Their minds no longer work properly because they've now been addled by drugs. And so the main character Jason, he accepts the invitation to the Eternal Feast because he's got to go there to get a syllable for this magical word that will kill the emperor, and the syllable is tattooed on one of the guards to the feast. And it's, oh my gosh, it's such a harrowing scene, or such a harrowing setting in the story. It's so good. Mick says, oh my gosh, Kuchisaki Onna mentioned, I love that urban legend, and it used to terrify me growing up, but it was fascinating. Japanese horror and urban legends will always be my most favorites. The Japanese know how to do horror. One of my best friends, she always says, if you find yourself in a horror story, you need to ask yourself this: what horror story am I in? If you find yourself in a Japanese horror story, she says, just lay yourself down the ground, assume the fetal position, because you're screwed. The moment that a horror story begins in Japanese, it's because you've broken a rule and you're already damned to die, but you don't know what rule you've broken. And the problem is with most Japanese horror, you don't know what rule you've broken until it's too late. And that's actually one of the things I like about the show Dandadan, is that Dandadan actually leans into that. about the rules that you don't know. How it's the rules that you don't know are what screw you over. Conquest says maybe. But trial and error is currently a bit hard with the way the story is right now. The magic is generally self-censoring to anything that is not other magic. It is a major part of the lore and mechanics of the story. The more I hear about Beyonders, the less interest I have in it. Maybe it's just me though, or maybe I just heard bad descriptions. Maybe I'm not doing Beyonders justice. Common Craft. I highly recommend checking it out. It really, at least in my opinion, it is one of the best one of the best grimdark fantasy series. It puts Game of Thrones to shame in terms of like the world that George R. Martin would love to have like created and established. Brandon Mull does it even better, and without all of the having to rely on sex to keep you interested. And also, I feel like 2ET Sutherland also drew a lot of inspiration from what Brandon Mull did, because if you read Wings of Fire shares a lot in common with how the world of Beyonders is set up, not necessarily in terms of magic or the species that inhabit it, but rather like the ruthlessness and the way and like how like the mechanics of choice is probably one of the best ways of putting it. So like if you find yourself, if you're someone who enjoys Wings of Fire, you will most likely really like Beyonders. If you like Beyonders, you most likely will really like Wings of Fire. If you don't like one, you will probably not like the other. Congress says, so this is why Grimdark with few exceptions doesn't click very well with me. I can't stomach it. Yeah, Grimdark is hard to stomach. One of the things that I like about how Beyonders balances Grimdark, and I actually was just having this conversation last night with my sister, is that if you want Grimdark to work, you need to have hope. One of the problems with a lot of Grimdark fantasies is that they squash the hope really early on, and then you're in sucky land for the rest of the story. Grimdark needs opposition within it. You need hope, because if you don't have hope, none of it makes any sense. Why are these people even existing? It literally doesn't make any sense. When it comes down for it to instance to like Warhammer, for me, it's always been really hard to get into the lore of Warhammer, just simply because I'm like, why do these characters even exist? Why is this even still going on? This literally breaks even the logic of this world. Like any sense of sentience or humanity, if you want to call it that, requires hope. It requires faith. It requires even a semblance of goodness in order for it to continue. Because without it, you truly do, it's hard to make sense of things afterwards. Things don't make sense. And that's one of the reasons why also Grimdark is really hard for people who love hope, because Grimdark normally crushes it. And the beauty of Beyonders, in my opinion, is again how Beyonders fosters hope even when it's so rough and dark. And what I love about Beyonders, especially at the end, is how it shows the worth of people who are willing to still be good. And it also shows the worth of even small choices. And honestly, it's so dang good. And there's very few stories, even stories that explore that particular theme, that manage to pull it off that well without becoming preachy. Big says, also in Japanese horror, the concept of running away and even calling the police don't work. Yes. Yeah, no. Telling the truth just doesn't work in Japanese horror. You're screwed. Lorraine asked, Lorraine's wrote, I forgot to ask at the beginning of the stream, which cruisy moment were you talking about at the beginning of chapter 5? Okay, so Lorraine, let me list out cruisy moments in chapter 5 at the beginning. And like all cruisy, you've got to go looking for it. So when you find out that Susie has been sleeping on Chris's bed, that's actually a pretty big one right there, because we do know that Susie enjoys her her bed of spikes. But when you consider what was happening just the night before, Chris and Susie shared a lot of experiences together with the prophecy, deciding to go against the prophecy. She crabbed them and they jumped into the face of a titan and together sealed a fountain. So, and also like the whole moment where Susie is smiling, even though she's got a bloody fist and she's obviously in pain, she's smiling against fate, against the darkness. And Chris resonates with this. This is the hope that Chris has been looking for. This is the gal that Chris has fallen in love with. It's a moment that's bonded them. And especially if you've hunted down all the other cruisy moments in chapters 3 and 4 leading up to that point, it highly implies, especially if you go through the cruisy route, that Susie had a very, very important moment with Chris. That if Chris had just spoken when you as the player prompt them to speak at the lakeside, Chris would have told Susie that they like her. And Susie would have reciprocated those feelings, at least to a certain extent. Would she have been all blushy? I highly doubt it, especially given everything that they had just gone through. But Susie's feeling a very deep connection to Chris. And after the harrowing revelations that she has just gotten in chapter 4, revelations that we ourselves haven't seen because she broke the glass before we had the chance to see it. She needs comfort. She wanted to spend the night with Chris, but Chris is back at home with Toriel. So Susie is sleeping in Chris's bed. That finding her hair in Chris's bed in the dark world is a huge moment because it is a detail that solidifies just how close these two are. Then, from that point on, if you start looking for it again, if you take Cruzy to go get makeup, if you tell Susie that she's good just the way that she is, that's what Susie has wanted to hear. And that is what, in the Cruzy route, if you've been playing up until that point, Chris has actually been trying to tell Susie that she's great just the way that she is. This whole time. And you have a chance then for Chris to convey that. Chris can nuzzle the Susie plush, which flusters Susie, and so she grabs the plush and throws it away from them, so they have a hard time nuzzling it. And then Ralsei's like, "Oh, but you nuzzling the real Susie is 10 times better." And so Susie then hurls Ralsei into space. And then Chris is like, "Do me next. Do me next." And Susie gets all flustered, like, "No, why are you looking at me like that?" Also, if you go back to where Susie pounded Chris into the lockers, Chris kind of pulls a bit of a Noelle and is all like, "I actually kind of like that. You could do it to me again." And Susie's like, "No, I'm not going to pick you up." And then if you engage in conversation again with Susie's like, "No, and you're not going to pick me up." Because Chris is just all like, "You, me, you, me." When you go out then into the fair, you can choose to do the strength test with Susie. And it's genuinely the most fun that any of the characters have if you do that one. Because Chris and Susie just have fun beating each other up with the hammers. Also, you can then go... Yeah, you can then go and do the Ferris wheel ride, and you find out that Ralsei had encouraged Susie to do the Ferris wheel with Chris, which is like Ralsei's being the wingman for Chris. Woohoo! And they share just a fun, nice moment. If you also did the diner scene with Susie back in chapter 4, Susie brings it up when they go talk to QC. And Susie is very happy about what happened and says that she wants to have more one-on-one time with just Chris, which makes Noelle freak out. Also, if you've talked about playing the piano with Susie and you selected that you will teach Susie how to play the piano. Susie brings that up in conversation, and it makes Noelle super jealous. And yeah, it's also when you find out that Noelle's been lying about how well she knows Chris, which is like super sus. So, so you have these various moments. Also, if you go and decide to vote for the hometown king and queen, you can vote for Susie as king or as queen. But you can choose Susie as king, like I did, because that's what Susie wanted, and then choose Chris as queen. And then you can show it to Noelle. When I did my live playthrough, I was like, I'm not going to be mean to Noelle. But then after seeing the Lakeside scene, I'm like, I'm going to be mean to Noelle. So you can actually have Chris show their vote to Noelle, and Noelle freaks out. And on top of that, and on top of that, Chris actually then draws an image of Noelle sad, to which then Noelle draws an image of Chris dead and in the grave. Which is like, oh my gosh, her strangling Birdley is apparently totally in character. She wasn't just like, wait, what? No, if anyone tries to get between her and Susie, Noelle is going to get violent. Meg says, oh my gosh, just kiss already, you two. Real talk, though. Susie has dibs on Chris while I have dibs on Rawlsy. Very nice. Very nice. So those are all choices that you can make in Chapter 5. None of those things from the hair to telling Susie that she's good just the way that she is, to the QC diner moment, to the hammers, to the Ferris wheel, to the voting. None of that stuff is stuff that you implicitly find in just a straight playthrough. You have to go looking for it. And so if you go looking for it, there's just all these cruisy things. And now then people can say, yeah, sure, it's just all platonic on Susie's side. But again, the hair in the bed in context with everything else suggests something way more different. And on top of that, Susie continues to share a lot of her most genuine side with Chris at the fair. And Susie doesn't complain at all whatsoever about all the things that you do that take her away from Noelle before the Lakeside confession. So as a result of all that, actually, and there's, wait a second here, there's one other thing that I need to bring up that is actually, well, a couple other things are actually kind of important. There's a joke moment where if you go into the bathroom, Chris can check out the apple-scented shampoo, and you get a little thing about how Chris fears that if they change to a different shampoo, Susie wouldn't recognize them. Now that's kind of funny and all, but compound that then if you go and you look up if you go back to look at how to draw dragons, Chris contemplates why there wasn't a sexy purple dragon amongst the Darkners. Well, the Dark World delivers what it is you're looking for. Why does the Dark World need to crank out a sexy purple dragon when Chris already has a sexy purple dragon walking right behind them? So the Chapter 5 at the very beginning, if you go looking for the details, there's a lot of blatant cruisy stuff. There's also a lot of tangential cruisy material. Some tangential cruisy material includes finding the love letters from Azrael to Des. Now, that is stuff that confirms Desriel, woohoo, I called it, but also regrets. Azrael never sent those love letters. Chris feels bad about that, which is interesting. There's a history there that we don't understand, but Chris knows the pain of Azrael not sharing even more with Des, which is interesting because Pizza Pants actually drops the fact that Azrael and Des were already an item. So why would Chris be feeling bad about unsent love letters from their brother to Des? unless there was more to say, unless there were other things that we don't fully understand yet. Chris knows the pain of not saying what needs to be said in the moments. And Chris deliberately chose, despite our potential pushing them to do so in chapter 4, chose not to tell Susie how they feel about her. Why, though? The answer's in chapter 5. And I'll get to exactly why that is. But another tangential cruising moment is that at the beginning of chapter 5 is actually being there for Pizza Pants when Pizza Pants is freaking out about being on stage alone. The interesting thing is that when I did my first playthrough, I honestly thought that the best ending was for Pizza Pants to get together with Caddy's older sister. Obviously, the worst choice is to send his coworker up there, because that's when he just absolutely crashes out. And he's like, "No one loves me!" Ah! If you choose Bratty, it's actually rather interesting, because Pizza Pants is full on in delusional state. He should know the truth. He should know the truth. But interestingly enough, Bratty actually starts having a change of heart. And when I look back at it, it's like, okay, what's more important? A character having a change of heart, or just making sure that one character now knows better and is happy? I think Pizza Pants will learn eventually what's all been going on. It's kind of inevitable. But that Bratty actually starts making choices that could help her become a better person by telling her, "You're responsible for this mess. Now go fix it." And that's actually kind of cool. Now, how is that tangentially cruisy? Well, because we've got a love triangle. We have a scenario where depending on how you play the game, you can go cruisy, you can go Suzelle, or you can go Chris L. And those different choices all lead, depending on how you play the game thus far. Going the Chris L route is obviously toxic. I'm sorry for all the Chris L fans who really love that dynamic. And honestly, in a better world, Chris and Noelle getting together actually sounds super sweet. But in the context of the game, it's really bad. Really bad for a lot of reasons. Susie and Noelle getting together. I know a lot of people really love it, but the honest truth of the matter is that it's not a very healthy dynamic. It isn't at this point. And so that's an issue. That's an issue that will need to be addressed and resolved if it is to move forward. And also to that end, the cruisy route is now riddled with a lot of other issues as well, because Chris has been lying to Susie. Susie will be very angry about that. Chris has to come clean about a lot of issues. Susie as well has got some things that she's got to work through. It's not perfect, but chapter 5 hints that it can be. And so when you look at who should Pizza Pants play music with at the beginning of chapter 5, as rough as it is to force Bratty to admit that she was wrong, and she's not happy about it, it sets the stage for something even better to happen down the road. So chapter 5 is full of cruisy material at the very beginning. Why would Toby put all of that in there unless it was still viable? And I say that because, again, coming back to Pizza Pants, our choices matter. They matter because of what they're going to do for these characters in the long run. And that's one of the things I love about Cruzy in general. It's something that you've got to go looking for. And it's something that if you're paying attention to that particular route, if you're really paying attention to the characters, you'll find out that what you're choosing isn't just necessarily, I as the player, I ship them, therefore I'm happy. But rather that choosing Cruzy genuinely makes both of those characters happier. And as we begin to see in chapter 5, it also saves them both from a potentially toxic relationship with Noelle. And that comes down to just where Noelle currently is in the story, which is not in a good place. Not necessarily all her fault, but also partly her fault. So, I've waffled on here long enough about that. Let me catch up with some things you guys have been posting up here. So, Lorraine, I hope you're still around. I hope that answers your prompt right there. Woo. A little golden plush says, I don't know if you already mentioned this earlier, but do you think Susie's following the prophecy without knowing it? Love will find its way to the girl. I mean, she is following the Susie's trying to do what she can to basically save people and hoping that by saving people, she's going to beat the prophecy. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting. She knows about the whole love will find its way to the girl thing, and she's really hopeful of that. And I think it's one of the reasons why she's really happy to get together with Noelle, because that's a really positive part of the prophecy. But more on that in the future. And he says, yes, you just need light at the end of the tunnel, even if it's just a little bit. Faith, trust, and pixie dust, as they say. Ah, yes. Conquer says, my dislike for grimdark stories got worse a few years ago when a story I was reading suddenly had a grimdark arc without warning, and that same arc had the narrative change from one where normal people are underestimated and ignored by people with fantastical powers to a narrative about how powerless people are just civilians who don't matter for the greater conflict outside EOF being pause of the people with powers. The arc after that one also had the main character lose all her ties and connections with normal people in favor of ones with powers, with normal friends now lost gaining powers around the same time. Yeah, I can see where that just feels like a big, massive rug pull. Oh no, Noelle's going yandere for Susie. Not a good sign. Yep, I agree. Even in grimdark stories, you need some light at the end of the tunnel, even if it's just a little bit. Yep. Comicraft says, one thing to note I found out earlier today is both Dark Worlds made by Chris had a secret anime girl-themed character in them that has a crush on Chris. With Pizza Pants, I honestly didn't even know there was a choice, though I thought it was either have Bratty go or just leave him on stage to get embarrassed. I didn't know you could interact with the others at the time. Yep, and it absolutely changes up how that all turns out, which is pretty glorious. Nick says, oh man, why doesn't this game have any attractive purple dragons in here? Susie, I'm right over here, dude. Chris, what? Susie? What? Ralsei? These two. Yeah, it's pretty much how it feels. Chris, this probably won't happen, but imagine if Deltarune ends with the game becoming a Stardew Valley-esque life sim. That we would be able to have the whole living with harmony with Chris thing happen. Interesting is that's based on discussions I saw about that general consensus is that Bratty's the worst choice because she gets rewarded with free pizza and gets scot-free. Generally, people consider Pizza Pants' coworker the ideal choice because Milk Looker says honesty is for the better. Ignoring is you're a loser part. I think that Susie believes she can pick and choose which parts of the prophecy come true. And you know what? I agree. I think Susie thinks that she can just pick and choose the prophecy at this point. And to the point where, like, I'm going to say this. I get why people would say, yeah, no, absolutely. Just make it like having Pizza Pants learn the truth and crashing out is for the best, because then, hey, the truth gets out there and Bratty will kind of feel bad for what she did. And it kind of puts all of these teens in their place. But Um, what I will say what I will say to that, at least still in my argument for I think that Bratty might be the best choice, is because sure you can say she's getting rewarded with pizza, but at the same time, that means she's got to be together with Pizza Pants, and Pizza Pants has got a lot of growing up to do, as does Bratty. And honestly, the two of them being forced to be together would actually probably lead to them learning some things about each other that they need to in order to become better people. That's far. That's more of a long term scenario. If you have Pizza Pants get together with Caddy, I think it's a good way of teaching Pizza Pants that you don't need to be in a romantic relationship to have friends and to have worth. And it also gives Caddy someone to be with in a positive way. Um, and so I mean all of that's good, but it leaves Bratty really stewing in her own pudding, and not in a very healthy way. Very much like what it could end up like being with Noelle. The way that I see that there's some real parallels with with the older teen, or I say more like with the young adults, regarding Pizza Pants' love life, that I think there's going to be some real parallels with those choices with what you could choose to do between Chris, Susie, and Noelle. Gotta go and check my phone. It's about to die. Yep. Make sure you're taking care of your phone. Mimic says, yeah, I like realistically Susie and Chris. Sounds like a better and healthier ship. They both have a lot more chemistry with one another. Also, their ship sort of mirrors Des and Azrael's ship too. And yeah, I absolutely see that, especially mirroring Azrael and Des. Little Golden Plush says Ralsei being a wingman for Cruzy. Amen. Mick says, in a way, if you think about it, maybe not 100%, it maybe 100%, but it definitely has some similar parallels to it. Maybe Chris will also be able to do what his older brother couldn't. I mean, yeah. So I think kind of on that note, let's switch on over to a little bit of theory crafting before we wrap up things tonight. So let's see here. Things I said to put pins in. Yeah. So how everything that's been happening thus far is all about bringing Noelle into the dark world, and why Chris chose to not say anything to Susie, even though we had the chance to prompt them to probably confess their feelings at the lakeside back in chapter 4. They actually go hand in hand together. This is right now my working theory for what is happening in chapter 5. So at the end of chapter 4, Chris is about to go out the window and follow Susie. And I think that when you look at everything in chapter 5, you're like, yep, it's because Chris likes Susie. Chris wants to be there with her. Being together with her is going against the plan. The plan has always been, as we get to see in the weird route for chapter 2, but also if you explore deeper into chapter 3, the plan has always been for Chris and Noelle to team up together to take on the Dark Worlds, to gain power. Why gain this power? The power, as we see through the sword routes, the power that you are seeking in the sword routes is to. Sorry, let me get my words just right here. Actually, I also have to let after the fat cat wanted in. Now the fat cat wants out. There you go, honey. Be free, fat cat. Okay, So in the sword route, you're trying to get in the sword route, you're trying to gain power. The power to basically do whatever you want. That's what's being offered to you. Now then, that in the sword route takes the form of Chris trying to get the power necessary to stand up against the knight, which was never part of the plan. Once the knight came to get the sacrifice, who is Undyne in chapter 3, the plan is for Chris and party to just get the floor wiped with them. But if you decide to go after the mantle, you can stand up against the knight and fight the knight to a standstill, which goes all against the plan. You're breaking the promise, you're breaking the rules, you're breaking the expectations. And so basically then the sword route, or the weird routes, it's all about Reeling and Noelle, is all about getting the power to resist, what comes next, the power to do whatever it is that you want. And we've got good enough reason to suspect that the plan is to bring the Dark World over in such a way that it's expansive, it's everywhere, and it will allow for Chris to rescue Des. But it comes at a terrible price. It comes at the cost of getting all this power. It requires sacrifice. Lots of sacrifice. And at one point, Chris would have been okay with that sacrifice. Except that now, well, Chris likes Susie. And Chris has reasons now to like Birdley as a friend. To care about Noelle and Caddy. Even though Noelle has been kind of a douche to Chris by this point, there are people to care about now. Reasons not to go through with such a dangerous plan. But at the end of chapter 4, Chris gets a phone call reminding them about their promise. Chris didn't say anything to Susie at the lake, even though we prompted them. At their room, at the window, when Susie comes back for them, Chris is ready to jump out the window, and very likely is ready to just tell Chris. Chris is ready to tell Susie everything, or at least confess their feelings to Susie. In any case, Chris is ready to talk. But the phone call interrupts that. Chris is reminded of their promise. What we then see in chapter 5 is that Chris has been out all night long preparing things for this particular day. It was always the plan to open up the Dark Fountain in Asgore's shop. That was the plan. Other things were set in motion to make sure that everything turned out exactly right. And Chris has to let Noelle confess to Susie. That is the plan. This is now my working theory. Chris went to meet Carol at the end of chapter 4. Talked it over with Carol. Together, they solidified the plan of what to do. Noelle will go to the fair with Chris and Susie. Chris is to make sure that Susie and Noelle, they hit it off, and everything works out just right. Carol's even willing to swallow Carol dating Susie. She's willing to swallow that fact, so long as it means that Noelle is pushed into a corner. Because once Noelle is dating Susie, Noelle is perfectly malleable. Just think about it here. Rudy, whatever's happened to Rudy with his fall, whether Carol pushed him, whether his illness or whatever finally started doing him in, whatever the case, Noelle is going to come rushing to her father's side is absolutely distraught, broken now. But guess what? We know, like, Chris knows that Susie will bring Noelle to the dark world. It's just too perfect now. They're too connected. Susie will do it. It hurts so bad, but Susie, like, Chris will let this happen. Or let's say Rudy isn't in any sort of danger. He's not even hurt. Well, guess what? Now that Susie is dating Noelle, Susie will instinctively want to bring Noelle in. So now, Noelle's coming into the dark world one way or the other. Either because she's going to want the power to save her father, or simply because Susie is going to just invite her. And once that happens, once Noelle goes into the dark world, or I should say goes back to the dark world, the plan can proceed. And I use that word intentionally, because the plan has always been to make Noelle stronger, to cultivate the power of her ice magic, because that is the power necessary to fully resist whatever is coming up with the prophecy. The plan is for Chris and Noelle to proceed forward. And Chris, by any means necessary, was to make sure that Susie and Noelle did indeed get together, because it puts Noelle into a corner. From this point on, Noelle will go wherever Susie goes, simply because she likes Susie. And that particular crush can now be utilized against them. It's devious. It's brilliant. Like, you think about it, you don't even need Rudy to be injured. Noelle is in a trap. And when she goes to the dark world, whatever the adventure is in chapter 6, it will push her to wanting more power. And the one person who she will realize has the most power is Chris. Because Ralsei's holding back. And while Susie is health-wise and defense-wise and strength-wise the strongest in the party, the thing is that Noelle will gravitate more to Chris, because Chris has changed. She already knows that Chris has changed. It's all thanks to what Susie has confessed. When she sees how Chris has changed, and what we know from the weird route, she will gravitate towards Chris. The moment that Noelle realizes that Chris has changed, Susie isn't even an afterthought. Noelle goes directly for Chris. Screw Susie. She doesn't care about Susie. She's not even waiting for Susie to come back with ice cream. She's not expecting to go back to Susie and flirt with her crush. Nothing whatsoever. Because she wants Chris and the power that Chris possesses. Now, what leads us to that? And this leads me now to another theory. And then, granted, again, this is built on pillars of sand. I think that it's far more likely now that Noelle had something to do with Des's disappearance. That Noelle has been far more in the dark world than what has been previously revealed or suggested. We know that Noelle likes being scared, but she likes being scared because other people rush to her defense. She likes being scared because Des would always come and be there for her. And now that we know that Des spent loads of time with Azrael making out, and that Des also spent a lot of time with Chris, and we know that Noelle is jealous. She be jelly. She's a jelly. Okay, I can't resist. She's a jelly-filled dough. Donut. I need to take a drink of water right here. Little Golden Plush says, no offense to anyone, but I think Suzelle is escapism on Noelle's side, or am I wrong? Little Golden Plush, I 100% agree with you. It is escapism. which is why the moment that she realizes that she can have even more power if she goes with Chris, she abandons the thought of being with Susie. 100%. Yeah, she's a little jelly dough, a little jelly donut because she's nuts. She's a nutty dough filled with jealousy. And isn't that crazy? Because in this chapter, the most jealousy that we see comes from Chris, and yet at the heart of it all, it's Noelle who was burning with jealousy. She's always been jealous. And so what I think, now then, granted, this is just based on some observations and some pillars of sand here. Doe, a deer, a crazy Noelle, Chris, a drop of depressing sun. Oh boy. So I think this is now a working theory of mine that when we learn in chapter 4 about the kids chasing the tail of the demon into the woods, I see that there's a real possibility that it was Noelle who initiated all of that. That Noelle probably went with Chris, as they say, the children. Now, granted, teenagers are also children, so it could be all four of them: Chris, Noelle, Des, and Azrael. But I think there's a very real chance that Des and Azrael were hanging out as teenagers in love in a small town, and all that implies, and that Chris went with Noelle because Noelle wanted to go somewhere where she knew she would be scared. Opening up a dark fountain out in the woods in a creepy place. Oh, it's perfect. Noelle is going to be scared, which means Chris is going to be there for Noelle. And if it's really bad, Des and Azrael will come running for Noelle. Because remember, going back to chapter 2, one of Noelle's strongest memories of childhood is of something crazy that happened in the woods, and that Des and Azrael were there to take care of her. What if Noelle went back in order to get that again? Because again, she loves getting scared because it means other people come to her rescue. What if Noelle, and I'll say, I don't think that she meant this in a bad way. She did not intend for any of the awful stuff that has preceded since then to happen, but that she went into the dark world knowingly, maybe alone, more likely with Chris, hoping to again have that experience, and then everything went wrong because you've got some silly, dumb kids chasing a cosmic horror. And now that we're learning more about Friend, I think that we're being given the proper breadcrumbs necessary to lead us to believe that Friend, if not the demon whose tail they were chasing, was a demon who definitely played a part in what happened that night. Bum, bum, bum. Noelle putting herself in danger to get that feeling. Oh, yeah. And if you then think about it, Noelle, again, the weird route at the end of chapter 5, drags Chris into the water. Now then, a lot of people are like, oh, this is suicide right here. And there's definitely a lot of things in chapter 5 that can be read as Chris is intending to off themselves. And that Noelle also wants to do that. Ultimate escapism. Eesh. However, I don't fully agree with that. Because Noelle isn't looking to just die. She isn't. She wants to live. We actually get that in her dialogue back in chapter 2. She wants to escape. She wants to be powerful. She wants to be someone else other than herself. She wants to fully escape. Drowning yourself ain't going to deliver any of those things. Death is not escapism. It's just an end. Life is where you continue to find all the potential to evolve, to change, to become. Life is where that's at. So, and granted, that's indeed higher thinking right there, but Noelle is, yeah, Noelle is definitely, Noelle is not fatalistic. So why drag Chris then into the water? It's because Noelle is expecting something big to happen. By doing something crazy, something amazing will happen. Why is that? Because the last time that Noelle did something crazy like this, Des and Azrael came to her rescue, and it cost Des everything. But Noelle is willing to risk that again because she knows someone will come to save her. So what exactly is going on? We are missing a very critical detail of what happened when Des vanished. But looking at what we learn about Noelle in this chapter and then putting into context with everything else from the previous chapters, I'm feeling more and more convinced that Noelle was absolutely part of the I'm pretty confident that Noelle was more part of the shenaniganery and the adventures in the dark world way back in the past. And that she probably made a choice at one point that helped to lead to her sister's disappearance. And Chris was a part of all that. And I think one of the reasons why Chris acts the way that they do, why they hold on to this promise and everything, is because I think that Chris feels that they hold a lot of the blame for what happened. Chris could have stopped Noelle. Chris could have made sure that none of this ever happened. Chris could have gone to Des and Azrael and let them know what was happening before it was too late. Or what if Chris was more powerful? That is what is taunted in chapter 3 if you fight Eram. Eram is all like, yes, you were once like this, Chris. Violence, a natural killer, dancing with the blade. Couldn't you be like that again, Chris? Don't you want to be like that again? Because if Chris could be that strong and fully unleashed once again, it's tempting. It's such a tempting proposition. And this time Chris could rectify the past and be there to save Noelle. But it's a temptation from Eram that does not work. Because by this time, Chris has got himself another gal. It's Susie. And Susie is the wrench in all the gears. Because Susie was never meant to go to the dark world, at least the way that it happened in chapter 1. Susie was very likely the dragon that was meant to be defeated in chapter 1, so that way Chris could save Noelle from Susie's clutches. And then together, Chris and Noelle would be powerful enough to beat Susie, and then Noelle would be set on the path of becoming more powerful, and thereby leading them to fight against the prophecy. But now that's no longer going to work. So instead, bring Noelle in, manipulate her in such a way that she will come into the dark world no matter what. And then whatever the adventurers plan for chapter 6 is going to be intentionally designed to force Noelle to start becoming what she was intended to become, whether you played the weird route or not. That is what is being set up. So there you have it. There's all my theory crafting, or at least some of my theory crafting. I got so much more to say, but I think we'll end it right there. Let me catch up with some things you guys have been writing here. Chapter 6, find I have a bunch of angst. Oh yeah, it absolutely will. Mimic says, I think Noelle X Burley would be a better ship than Noelle X Susie, to be honest. Ship what you want to ship. Like, Noelle and Birdley isn't inherently a bad ship, but Birdley's got a lot of changing. He's got to do his whole welcome to the pity date. Oh, that was so cringe. That was so bad. Meg says, what the cat wants, the cat gets. Meow, 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 meow. Meg says, I know they're technically just friends, but it could probably be a much healthier dynamic. I know Noelle and Birdley are technically just friends, but it'd probably be a much healthier dynamic. It could be, especially if Birdley grows up a little bit more and Noelle starts being more honest. Excuse me, and less self-centered. Noelle's about to unleash the ultimate power of her inner Karen. Oh, it's going to be deadly. Yep, like mother, like daughter, as they say. And then Sheesh Chapter 6 is going to be it's going to be messy and juicy, and I'm all here for it. Oh, me too. Doe, a deer, a crazy Noelle. Noelle made a glitch and wanted to get it back, so she made Chris go with her. Art says Noelle put herself in danger to get that feeling. Noelle's a siren. Golden Plush says, I got a weird feeling that friend is connected to Caddy. There's definitely some connection there. I'm going to say this, is that I think that we're going to learn more about who friend is thanks to Caddy, because Caddy has been messing around with the occult. And the cat game that Noelle was playing around with was also loaned to her from Caddy. So I think that, yeah, there's a connection there, and that'll be something I'm really interested in exploring, and hopefully in the next 2 chapters. He says, oh, Professor Lars is spilling all the tea today, honey. I know I am on a roll. Woo! Lorraine says, I'm wondering if Noelle will take part in Sealing a Dark Fountain. They split, and Chris goes with Ralsei, and Noelle goes with Susie, and Noelle wants to go on a weird route, and it goes bad. You know, I never contemplated that, Lorraine, but that's actually a really good guess. I could see that. I could see that Noelle, after an adventure, is like, hey, Susie, come with me. We're going to do this. And then Noelle is the one who starts kind of going off the branch. And Susie's like, no, we should spare people. And Noelle's like, well, why should we do that when we can have all this power? Like, don't you think that when you have all this power, you can do whatever you want? And Susie'd be like, what are you saying? And meanwhile, you got Chris off to the side, like the Jack Nicholson meme of like, yes, go along with the plan, Noelle. Perfect. Give in to the dark side. Noelle also seems to be hesitant to take accountability. She drags Chris into the water, but doesn't want to have to say that she was the one to do it. So she tries to make her do it. Yep. Yes. So, you could say she's yandere. Oh, knee slap. That's just pretty good. He says, is it possible for Noelle to get into a rivalry with the player, not Chris? Also, Image Friend is implied to be a swarm like enemy in the update yesterday. Yeah, or as I've been saying on Discord, like the Rat King and Hilda. You know what? I think it is possible for Noelle to get into a rivalry with the player, or maybe even better yet, to actually try to get into a relationship with the player if and when she were to realize that it was the player who's been changing Chris this whole time. And then for her to be all like, oh, the real power is with the player. Now then, that sounds really messed up, but honestly, at this point, I wouldn't put it past her. Manic says, imagine after all this crazy, crafty theorizing, Chapter 6 is just one fat Rickroll. I'd be here for it. Because Toby Fox is more capable of doing something like that. Yes, I can feel the hatred. Take your saber. I am defenseless. Strike me down and give in to the dark side. It's perfect. I prefer the rivalry myself. That would be a really interesting route to go. And it would drag the player kind of front and center. And it would be that, and beyond just what the dynamic between the player and Noelle would be in that kind of a situation, you would also, if it were then to come to light, for instance, for a character like Susie, what that then means for Susie is that Susie then has to reconcile that her best friend has been possessed by us this whole time, And then that would actually lead to some really interesting conversations because Susie would have to then actually communicate with Chris. And it could then be that Chris and Susie then have like a full honest to goodness conversation without us, the player, which we have seen that happen to a certain degree, or we at least got to hear it and read it if you go to the diner in chapter 4 with Susie. And so I think it'd be very interesting. It'd be very interesting to go that route. I don't know exactly how Toby Fox would make that all work, but it could be interesting. Darkest Daydream says, I'm starting to think Noelle is some sort of player 2 in Deltarune. Oh boy, a dirty joke from one of my cousins just suddenly popped into my head the moment I I read that. Say Chris ripping out the player's soul, and Noelle suddenly walks in on it, and Chris is like, I can explain, kind of, and the heart's like, yes, and then Noelle's just like, player 3 has entered the room. You're like, oh no. And not to mention that Toby Fox did work with the Andrew Hussey back in the ancient times too, so it wouldn't surprise me one bit. Oh boy. Oh dear. Okay. Well, everyone, I'm going to start wrapping things up here for the evening, because as I said earlier, I got other things I need to make sure that I still do tonight. But this has been absolutely a whole lot of fun. Got to talk a little bit about some writing. You guys now have a little writing tool and challenge that I hope that you put to use and that it is of use to you. We got to do some theory crafting. I got to read some Two Towers, which is always a great experience. Dark Stage Dream says, that's what led me to start formatting Tattered Angel theory. Very interesting. I must learn more about the Tattered Angel. Also, I gotta give my voice a rest. So it's not as bad as it has been like the last 2 or 3 live streams. So I'm like, oh, I can feel it going. But yes, I will give myself a little bit of a rest. Little Golden Plush says, last question: how long will your upcoming Cruzy theory video be? That is a good question. I don't want it to be as long as the 44 minutes Cruzy analysis that I did post chapters 3 and 4, but it will probably still end up being a rather long one. Each page, depending on how fast I read of the script, is about 5 minutes long. And it's kind of funny because usually I come in with all the energy and gusto to make each page like a 3-minute read at first, but if it's a very long script, then that tends to slow down. So all depend on how long the script ends up being. I'm definitely trying to make it a little lighthearted at the beginning, so that will also change up some stuff. I think, though, even with all the clips that I intend to have there in the video, I suspect it will be about half an hour long, is my guess. Mostly because while the Cruzy stuff that is in chapter 5 is fairly straightforward in terms of the numbers and whatnot, a lot of the Cruzy material that we find in this chapter must be put into specific context. Not just what's happening within the chapter, but what happened in the previous chapters. That way, then you're able to really make sense of why these scenes are significant and why they qualify as Cruzy. Meg says, great live stream as always, Mr. Lars. This was amazing as usual. Well, thank you so much. And I slipped on a ton of tea today. Needless to say, I am quite intrigued. Oh, yeah, there's so much more. And we haven't even actually gotten to some of the stuff that I personally like beyond Cruzy. Like, I want to talk about the redemption of Asgore, which Toby Fox absolutely pulled out, I think, a really unexpected treat, especially for Undertale fans, because Asgore was made in many ways just really kind of like the butt of the joke, the guy who could not win no matter what. And in Deltarune, it seemed like he was been set up for an even worse fall. But this chapter did so much for his character that you're like, wow, like Asgore, you are really genuinely an awesome dude with such a turnaround. It's really, really neat. So that's something I really want to get into. I absolutely want to get into the foreshadowing. I want to do a video dedicated to how all of the secret bosses are really revealing about Chris and their personality and their history. So loads of things that I intend to get to once we're done with the Cruzy video. But as I promised, I wasn't going to do any of that stuff until the Cruzy video came out first. So so yeah, I got to keep myself in check there. Anyways, Miguel says your theories are always great to hear and listen to. Keep up the awesome work, and I hope you have a wonderful and a juice-tastic night. Well, thank you. I hope that you all as well have a great day, morning, or evening, wherever you are at. And I'll be seeing you guys soon in the next video. But until then, y'all, thank you so much for joining me for this live stream through this adventure that we call writing and all these fantastic observations and theories for Deltarune. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.